So next up we have Cheryl. And Cheryl is one of those cards. She has some nice pill manipulation if you can get it to go. She's basically a 4-star version of Ansem, and I've never really liked either of them all that much. Although, you know, Cheryl can surprise. I mean, I've been beaten by Cheryl's before. So she's a 6/6, and she has -3 pills, -4, which is nice. But again, with that 6 power, it's really hard to get that. It's really hard to get that to go off. You know what I mean? You've got to throw a ton of pills on her, and if you lose, you know, you've lost all those pills. So I've never really used her a whole lot, even before. I think she came out before 9-powered cards were a thing. And now that 9-powered cards are a thing, it's just like, you don't want to use Cheryl generally. But a lot of, I still see her occasionally in Piranha decks. So, I don't know. Next we have Zlatar, who is complete crap, and is only really used, well, you can see he's going for 20 grand there. I think a lot of people are thinking he's going to go CR one of these days, because he's the leader of the uppers. So, I don't know. He's really unusable. I think is he a 1 power or a 3 power? I forget. Yeah, he's a 3 power. So, I mean, you can just, like, toss him out there and make people pill over you because of the -3 on his attack manipulation. Obviously, he can hit for 8. But, I mean, honestly, a 3-powered card, you're just not going to, you're not going to get very far with that. You know what I'm saying? So, that's Zlatar. Next, we got Norma. So, we've got a lot of commons here that we're hitting. So, Norma is, she's a card I've never really used much from Riots. They've got much better 5 stars. So I still see her I still see newbies using her occasionally in EFC mode, but she's just not that great. And Riots have enough options at 5-star now that I don't even use her in T3. So then you got M-Bolt here, who I've never used because he sucks. And I'm not even going to talk about him because he's completely worthless in my eyes. If you have a different opinion, leave a comment below. Anyway, moving on to Dwan. I've actually used Dwan before. She's pretty nice. She's got some nice strong DR, -4 -2 DR, and she's a 7/6 for skills, which, it isn't really scary stats, but she's a nice dual purpose card. So, you can throw a couple pills on her and maybe you get through for 6, and if not, her DR goes off. So it's kind of a win-win. And so, in T3 decks, I'm still probably using Dwan in a mono skills, for example. She definitely has her place for DR. So then we come to Urton here, and Urton he's kind of fallen by the wayside ever since he got replaced by Weifang. Since Weifang, is it Weifang or Weifang? I'm going to call him Weifang. Weifang has an ability and Urton doesn't, and that's really the only difference between them. So, they're both 8-5, both 5 stars, same bonus. But Wei Fang is a protection power, I think. So, they're both equally good versus SOA. It's just Wei Fang's going to be better against other cards than Urton. So Urton kind of got bumped out of the way. He does have nice semi-evo stats. So sometimes I guess you could use him as a semi-evo card. Here he is as an 8-2, 2-star. With the All-Stars bonus, he's a virtual 10-2. So he can be nice. But I think a lot of people are speculating that he's going to go CR at some point because he's the All-Stars leader card. So he's going for 29 grand right now, it looks like. And moving on to Nahima. Nahima's a nice card. I think she's basically an 8-8, right? And she also has +2 life. So she can hit for a lot. And her power's pretty nice. But, she can also be nerfed pretty easily by SOA. So that's why she's a common card. And I guess power manipulation can affect her too. I haven't used Nahima a whole lot. By the time she came along, Jungo already had some pretty decent 5 stars like Ong and a Sky. Sylph. Sylph's not a 5, he's a 4, but by the time she came along, Jungo already had a pretty good stable of powerful 5s and 4s. Next we have Vryer. And Vryer was actually he was one of the starting cards in my deck when I started the game. He was one of my very first cards that I got there to start with. And he definitely, he doesn't have a place in competitive play anymore. I don't know if he ever did. But, he is Geist's scientist, right? He's their chief scientist or whatever in the lore. And I think a lot of people are speculating that he might go CR, which is why he's sitting at 15 grand at the moment, it looks like. But yeah, as soon as I could, I replaced Vryer with better cards like the aforementioned Bristone. So, moving on to page 3 here, we pulled Vito yesterday, and he's an uncommon Montana card. I was really excited about him when he first was released, but I quickly kind of lost interest in him. He's a 6-5 SOA, which is decent. I mean a 6-powered Montana card is basically an 8-powered card, as long as you're using less than 8 pills. You know what I mean? And how many times, and you're generally not going to more than 8 pill a card anyway, right? So, so when you look at him that way, an 8-5 SOA for Montana is pretty decent. But he just doesn't compare to a lot of the other cards in the clan, such as who's the Swordmaster guy? I'm blanking right now. Anyway, there are better cards than Vito, so he never really saw a whole lot of play in my decks. Next we have Bogdan, and Bogdan was always a really powerful card for freaks, but then and then he got banned in EFC, and he really hasn't been really useful since then. You can use him in T3 if you don't have Splata, for example. But if you have Splata, obviously you're going to use Splata. But Bogdan, you know, he's got a place. Like, if you don't have Splata, or if you just want double SOA, I guess you could use both of them in T3. But I generally don't use Bogdan a whole lot anymore. He was really more of an ELO card, and now he's not usable there anymore, so he's just kind of hanging out. But he does fetch a high price, 45 grand, so there's still a demand for him. Next up we have Gumbo, and Gumbo has always been a super bad A card for Nightmare. Big ol' 7/7 with that -10 -7 DR, not DR, attack manipulation. So he's just a big bruiser of a card, does a lot of damage, and obviously he's not EFC playable anymore, but he definitely makes it into your T3 decks. He's always going to be in my Nightmare T3 decks. So good old Gumbo. And like I said, he's the reason cards like Selena just aren't that great, because they don't compare to him. Next up we have Gork, and Gork's actually a pretty decent card. He's a 7/8 with the Geist bonus, but his and he has Backlash Poison, which doesn't really come into play generally. You're usually going to hold him, for the 3rd or 4th round for a KO. The only problem with Gork is there are cards like Wardum and, Miss Twice CR. Not a whole lot of people have her. But Wardum, even XU52, just, there are a lot of cards that come before Gork for Geist. Even a lot of 4-stars like Toro CR are going to be used in place of Gork. So he is EFC playable, but still, you're going to use, if you're going to have a 5-star in your Geist deck, it's probably going to be Wardum. So Gork just doesn't see a whole lot of play anymore. Well, I don't think he ever saw a whole lot of play, to be honest. But, he's decent, and sometimes he can, he has good stats for a Geist card. So, anyway, Sukarito, she's amazing. She's a staple 4-star for Nightmare, and I use her quite often in my Nightmare EFC decks. She and Oshitsune pretty much hold down that 4-star spot. So not a whole lot of Nightmare cards compare to her. I don't know. Now you've got that other dude, the ghostly armored guy, who has damage exchange. I guess he's replaced her to some degree. I don't use him a whole lot though. I still tend to use Sukarito just because, I don't know. I just have a fondness for her, and maybe I'm set in my ways. Maybe I need to start using him more. And of course I can't remember his name right now, but you know who I'm talking about. Next we have Kinjo, the original one-hit KOer of Fang P Clang. But these days he's mostly just a novelty. His 6 power is way too low to really do a whole lot, and so he doesn't see a whole lot of play anymore. I actually used him in EFC, not EFC, ELO, back in the day, once or twice, and he wasn't bad back before 9-powered cards were a thing. Now 6 damage just kills him basically. So, or 6 power, I mean. 6 power just doesn't stand up to 9-powered cards, you know what I'm saying? And of course, Fang P has way more decent 5-stars than Kinjo now. So he's kind of fallen by the wayside. But as you can see, he's going for 43 grand. So there's CR speculation, especially since Lost Hog went CR, and there's very similar cards. So next we have Wee Lee, and I've always liked Wee Lee, just because he's like a 4-star Tanariva basically. I've always liked those dual edge cards that either hit you for a nice chunk of damage or DR you. So he's one of those. He's basically a 9/6 with -2 -1 DR. And people say that that's kind of weak DR, but it's still decent. It's the Pussycat bonus. You can't tell me Pussycats are weak. So I've always found Wheelie to be a pretty decent card. But nowadays, I generally don't. Is he EFC banned? I can't remember. I think he might be. At any rate, I use other cards over him, such as Moai now. So next we get to Bowden Power here. And Bowden Power, he's the Bangers leader, of course. He did just recently get replaced by Christie, who basically has a better... She's basically Bowden Power with a better ability. So a lot of people are speculating that he's going to go CR one of these days because she replaced him and because he's a leader. So we'll see. He's going for 84 grand, that's why. Wee Lee's also up there too, 48 grand, so he might go CR one of these days. And next we have Iguan, who, he's a semi-decent 2-star for Dominion. I've used him quite a bit, especially because of his, he had a mission for a while there, so I was working on his mission. But nowadays, if I want a 2-star Dominion card in my EFC deck, it's probably going to be Goolyug. And, other than Goolyug, I don't know, there are other cards that have kind of replaced Iguan. But, he can be tough. He can be a 10, like a 10-3 on round 1. And then he slowly kind of... Actually, I guess he kind of retains that, doesn't he? I don't know. Anyway, Iguan's decent. Next up we have Scylla. Poor Scylla. She definitely was a decent card when she first was released. But ever since she got EFC banned, she's just one of those cards that's like, what do you do with her now? You know what I mean? I suppose she has a place in T3 Vortex decks. You can use her there. But I just think it's sad that she got EFC banned, because she was a decent Vortex card. Anyway, moving on to Leon. I've rarely used Leon, although I do see him in EFC quite a bit, and I have been beaten by him on many occasions. So he's a nice card for Montana. I guess when I use Montana in EFC mode, I rarely use a 5-star. So that's why I don't use Leon all that much. I generally use Montana's 3s and 4s more than I use the 5-stars, and even their 2s. So I generally don't use a Montana 5, and that's the only reason I really haven't used Leon all that much. So he's a 7/7 with Reprisal SOA. SOA is always nice. And as you can see, he goes for 67 grand, so he's a pretty highly valued card. But for me, I've just never been able to fit him into my decks very well. So even in T3, I haven't used Montana in T3 for a long time. But he might make it into my T3 rotation if I ever use Montana's there. We'll have to see. Kamakura is pretty much crap. There are way better Sentinels cards than him. Sentinel 4 stars. He just, he has a conditional ability, and he's a 6/6 with confidence +2 attack, +2 power, I think. So he can become an 8/6. But I mean, you've already got cards like Hawk that are already 8/6 with an amazing ability like SOA. There are cards like Kobe, who is an 8 power and also can deal a whole lot of damage. Anyway, Kamakura just, I don't think he ever made it into any of my Sentinels decks. I have played with him, but very rarely. I think I played with him when he first came out. So anyway, that's 36 cards, and there are 42 cards in this pack. So at least, 6 more cards here? So, starting up at the top here, we got Pandagran here, who was the very first Huracan 5-star that was released. Every time they release a new clan, you release the first 4 cards on week 1, and it's always a 5, a 4, a 3, and a 2. And Pandagran was the first Huracan 5-star, and he's never been super popular. He quickly got replaced by other better 5-stars. He's a 6/7 with revenge. Wait, is that right? I gotta look. I haven't used this guy for ages. I haven't used him since he was released. So yeah, so he's a 6/7 with revenge power +2. And 6 power is decent with the Huracan bonus, but revenge isn't a really great power. That's why I was kind of comparing Batul to Pandagran, because she's also kind of a big card with a revenge ability, and for Kamboka. So I don't know though. She has an 8 power though, so she might have some staying power. She might last a little longer than Pandagran, but he kind of fell by the wayside pretty early on for Huracan. Anyway, let's go to page 4 here. So next up we have Valhalla, and she is a really nice card for Dominion, and I've used her quite a bit. Unfortunately, she's now EFC banned. So what is she? She's a 7/2, I think, a 7/2 3-star, and she has damage exchange, which is awesome. So really now she's kind of relegated to, I don't know if she's usable in tourney or not, but I don't think she's usable in tourney type 2. I'm pretty sure she's banned from tourney type 2. So is it just, banned from EFC? Oh, maybe she is usable in tourney. But she's basically just like a T3 card now, right? And she does work okay there, honestly. I mean, she's only a 3-star, but you're going to be there are a lot of big cards in T3, a lot of high damage cards, and so she can steal their damage and even beat them with her bonus activated, with her bonus. So she's a pretty nice card, and since she's 3 stars, she's gonna a lot of times force your opponent to go first in T3 because they'll probably have higher stars than you. So she definitely works in that environment. I really liked her in EFC though. I really liked using her in EFC, and I can't anymore. But now we have Gure. Speaking of EFC banned cards. Goo-Ray was a friggin' monster in EFC. Holy cow. I loved using Goo-Ray. But of course, those days are over. So he's an 8-5 with victory or defeat -2 pills. -2 pills on life. And so he's a powerhouse. You can see he and Valhalla both are valued around the same, about 85 grand there. And yeah, he was a nice card for skills. Of course, now he's only usable in T3, and so that's where you're gonna get the most bang out of Goo-Ray. And I don't know, I don't use skills a whole lot in T3, so I'm sure they're viable there. I just haven't had the chance to get in there and use them. And lastly, we have Romana, Shell, and Galactia. Now, Romana, as I've said many times, I believe she's one of the most perfect cards in UR. And what I mean by that is she's a 7/4 with an ability -1 damage, -1, I think it is. And basically she just has, 8/4 are great stats. And in addition, she has the Junks bonus, which is nice with her 8 power. So she also -1s your power and damage. Did I say -1 damage? She has -1 power and damage, -1. So she's going to -1 your power in addition to that. And I said 8/4, didn't I? I mean, she's a virtual 8/4. Let's look at her stats here. She's a 7/4. Okay. She's a 7/4, which is solid stats for a 3. But then she also has -1 power and damage, -1. So she's essentially an 8/4. And she has the Junks bonus. And if you lose with her, she'll DR your opponent by 1. So that's nice. She's just, the reason I like Romana so much is that she's one of those cards that's like as powerful as possible without being overpowered. You know what I mean? I think she's perfectly balanced. So she's not going to get EFC banned. And she's just one of the best Junks 3 stars you can possibly have. And of course, that is reflected in her value, which is 359 unleveled, or 310 grand fully leveled. And just so you know, that's kind of, you can pretty much tell the good cards from the bad cards by their value, So, if you're looking for like, good Geist cards, for example, just go pull up the Geist cards in the market, and you can just sort them by, by value. And you can see, basically, not always, but for the most part, the most powerful cards are going to be the most expensive cards. That's just the way it goes. We talked about Zlatar earlier, who's the exception to that. So there are some cards like Zlatar that are, that have collector value, that could possibly go CR, or they just have other collector value that are going to be valued kind of highly. So, but for the most part, you can tell which cards are powerful by looking at their price. Anyway, moving on from Romana, she's amazing. Shell is a great card for Uluwatu. She's a nice little 7/3, which is really 9/3 with their bonus. And she has +1 life per damage. So she's a 9, she's essentially a 9-powered card that can make a 6 life gap. And she's only 3 stars. And then if you Fury, she can make a friggin' 10 life gap, which is ridiculous for a 3-star. So she's way nice. Definitely a staple in Uluwatu decks. And I use her fairly frequently when I'm using Uluwatu, unless I'm trying to do heal life or something like that. Because, as we all know, heal life. If you're trying to get heal life points, plus life just kind of gets in the way of that because it puts you up close to or over your max, and then you're not getting heal life points. You know what I mean? But when I'm not doing heal life with Uluwatu, I always got Shell in my deck because she's friggin' awesome. And lastly, we have Galactia. She's a great skills card. She's an 8/4 with poison 1, min 0. No, actually it's Toxin. Is it Toxin? I gotta check her stats. So yeah, it's Toxin 1, min 0, which is friggin' amazing. So if she hits on round 1, your opponent loses 5 damage, and then 3 more from Toxin over the rest of the match, which puts her like she's dealing 8. She's basically an 8/8. So pretty nice card, and sometimes you can Fury with her and really catch people off guard. But she's a very nice 4-star, and of course she has a protected ability, so she's not going to be getting SOA'd. And there you go. That's my pack. I don't think it was a super amazing pack. Romana was the best card I got at 359 grand. So it wasn't an amazing pack, and I generally don't buy these special packs for that reason. It's kind of a crapshoot. You can get some nice cards, and I guess for me, I have all these cards already, so for me it's just not as exciting, I guess. And also, all the cards I'm looking for right now are like CR cards, basically. So when you're looking at cards that are like worth 85 grand, 37 grand, even 300 grand, it's like that's a drop in the bucket when I'm trying to save up for 5 million plus CR cards. You know what I mean? So I tend to kind of overlook these cards, and I don't like to buy these special packs generally. Obviously, if you pull a Vulcan, do you guys pronounce it Vulcan or Vulcan? I don't know. Obviously, if you draw that card, like that's friggin' crazy. It's like winning the lottery, right? But that will very rarely happen. And so, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the cards that I pulled from my friggin' pack. And yeah, let's go home here. Do we need to talk about anything else? I don't think so. So, awesome. Thanks for joining me, everybody. And please like and subscribe and tell all your friends. You've been hip tipped. And I am HipHoppa. Thanks for joining me for Hoppa's Hip Tips. And I will see you a little later, probably Monday, for some hot, steamy EFC action, baby. We'll get into season 27. We'll see you then, guys. Thanks for joining me. Bye.